Don't you think it's about time for a podcast that's more fulfilling? One that's about the vibrant exchange of ideas and perspectives that happens when we actually come together. We got you covered. Welcome to the DeepBlu Project, where the depths of conversation meet the waves of personal experience. This is a real, raw, and unscripted show about everything from leadership lessons to self-awareness, wellness, and the latest current events. We cover it all. We have a rotating cast of guests as we share our personal stories, insights, and opinions on the issues that matter most. Plus, we have a blast while doing it. The DeepBlu Project. It's not just a podcast, it's an experience. And now your host, Chris Workman.
All right. Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of the DeepBlu Project. Today, we are going to take a little detour from the theme of our first few episodes to cover a topic that's becoming increasingly problematic for law enforcement agencies across this country, especially small rural and tribal agencies in the United States. In 2018, a law enforcement survey reported by the Bureau of Justice showed that 89.5% of this nation's law enforcement agencies have less than 50 officers. Less than 50. And agencies with 10 or fewer officers make up nearly half of the over 18,000 police agencies across the nation. To join us in our discussion today, I am happy to have Chief John Clair of the Town of Marion Police Department. Welcome, John. Thank you for taking the time to join us today.
I appreciate it, Chris, man. Thanks for having me.
Can you give the audience a little insight into your background, please?
Yeah, real quick. I grew up in Gotham City. That's the greater Dayton area of Ohio. Joined the Army right out of high school as a military police officer in 1999. Last duty station was Northern Virginia. Bounced around at some federal police contracting, and then went into my career in Dumfries, town of Dumfries, Virginia in 2007. That was about 20 sworn, then went to the Prince William County Police Department, which is, I think, now about 800 sworn. And then 11 years ago became the chief of police of the town of Quantico, which is the only civilian town completely confined within a military base. And then 6 years ago came down to Southwest Virginia to become the chief of police of Marion. Best decision I ever made. And I also am the second vice president of the Virginia Chiefs Association.
Awesome. So John and I, for full disclosure, we're together on LinkedIn. We talk about a lot of the same things, and a lot of it has to do with small town policing and the things that we're dealing with as small town police leaders. So I wanted to bring John on and kind of discuss something that's passionate for both of us and a problem that we're facing. And as we led in to the option, of being a leader in a small police department, obviously has become a very challenging endeavor. So absolutely. I'm going to lead off with this, John, with you. What is your thoughts on the problems that we as small agencies are facing today when it comes to the recruiting of new officers?
So it's always an interesting topic. I think often it gets framed wrong. Small town policing is a categorically different type of policing. It's not like there's this whole big, we imagine it as this whole big thing of policing, and we're just a smaller version of the big thing. That's not true, right? Like rural areas, sheriff's offices, urban areas, highly diverse areas, highly homogenous areas, right? There's just kind of this whole collection, and small town policing is a unique set of skills. I think the small town officer has to have is more of a Swiss Army knife than any other type of officer. So recruiting for that is a very unique thing. And if we do the recruitment wrong, we end up with a problem, right? Because the recruit thinks they're coming into the big thing of policing just at a smaller scale. And that's often wrong. So if we frame it right to begin with, we end up with better results. But right now, and I think this has probably always been true, but more so now, the job market is very open for policing. And you have freedom of movement. Right now, Chris, think about this. When you came in your career or I came in mine, I am absolutely confident that I could move anywhere in the United States today and get a police job.
Right.
That has to be rare. So we are constantly fighting the battle of not only the hygienic aspects of retention, right? The culture, the pay, the equipment, those kind of hygienic things, but the motivation aspects, the why we're here, the what potential I have. And it's a constantly an uphill battle. Before you and I started, we were talking about, man, it's like just like when we feel like we win, right? It's feast or famine. So if I'm losing 10% a year, that's a totally different feel for me and you than it is for a large agency.
Right. Well, I think that some of the things that we see, and we all read the national articles, we read the things that are out there, and I think some people do not realize when they're reading this, is a lot of this is geared towards the large metropolitan agencies. Like, you're getting statistics that are coming out based on larger agencies, not agencies that are small. As I said in the beginning, 50% of this nation's agencies are 10 or less. They're 10
Right.
or less. So if you say you're losing, 1% for a 10-person agency, like it changes drastically what you can do. So I was looking a couple of days ago, and and ever since the defund police movement and all of that stuff, we've had articles come out a lot of times, and some of these statistics are based on then, and some are less. But the most recent one that I saw was in April of 2024. It was an NBC News report that said in 2023 more officers were hired than the previous 4 years. Now people look at that and go, wow, like it's not so bad. But then you read further into it and you find out that this was compiled from a perf survey, which was only answered by 214 agencies.
Right.
Like, you have to look. The problem I think we look in is that we don't look into the real numbers. And as smaller departments,
right,
as you and I attest to, you touched on it again, like when we were talking before, is when you lose people, like it's a drastic change. Like, you need to do more with less, and
Exactly.
we still have to do the same job, if not even more, because we don't have specialty units. We don't have detectives to handle things that have to be investigated. That's the officer. We don't handle traffic. We don't have a traffic unit. That's done by the same person.
So if you lose an officer, you could lose an entire department categorical skill set, right? Like your small agency, right, has traffic, has an officer that does traffic, has an officer that does good at investigations, you lose an officer, it's like trimming off a division of an agency, and you lose massive capability. But Chris, I did want to say, and you mentioned the defund the police discussion. Without getting overly political, I want to say something, and you tell me if you think it's true.
Right.
The defund the police talking point has led to the largest single generational salary and benefits increase in law enforcement history.
Oh, no doubt.
Yeah, and that is killing us, right? Because now we're stuck in this escalating chain because we have a reduced supply. We're stuck in this escalating chain, and we can't keep up. The small agencies simply can't keep up. So in Marion, listen to this. When I came to Marion in 2018, we started at $30,000. Now we start at $44,500. $14,000 in 6 years. And even at that level, that might sound to you or in your area like not a lot of money, but here it works pretty well. But even at that level, we're still well behind the power curve.
Well, I think I just had the discussion the other day with my town officials that I had to push to a point where we're somewhat competitive with the other municipalities close to our range to just try to attract people.
Yeah.
And then we find out you have these other agencies that are going, the state police now within 2 years is going to be starting at $90,000.
That's insane, man.
Starting.
Right.
Now, the municipalities are not going to be able to keep up with that. So you look at a point where now we've had to transition in our department alone because they're adding bonuses, they're adding money. Everybody says, and I wrote an article on LinkedIn and you had commented on it, and I've got some backlash from it because I get tired of seeing these archaic things, and I get why they're saying it. Like in the grand scheme of things, bad, people don't leave bad jobs, they leave bad leaders.
Right,
But nowadays in policing, as you touched on, there's so many jobs open and so many, the salaries are so ridiculous that people are going, well, if I'm going to put my life on the line and I'm able to move to wherever, why don't I go make LeBron money instead of making, starting recruit money? Like, that's and just it. Like,
there is a difference between like the LinkedIn platitudes, which there is some truth to, right? Like,
sure,
people typically don't leave because of money unless it's a mortgage payment of difference.
Yes.
I mean, right. We have to have, so like we were talking about like the hygienic factors, the salary, the benefits, the equipment, they don't have to be the primary focus, but they have to be in sight of everyone else. So that way, when the officer's looking across the field, they say, hey, all that stuff, all those targets are pretty much in range. Now let me look at those motivation factors, what I can do, how much growth I can experience in the agency, who is the agency's leader? Do I feel inspired? But just like in social issues, or, you think of like Maslow's hierarchy of needs, right?
Right.
People don't think about the bigger functions when they can't find food.
Right.
Right. So we have to at least keep them in sight. And that's incredibly difficult, man.
Well, I think adds on top of that is and this conversation, and I don't want people out there listening, don't point me out as the old guy is getting ticked off at Generation Z or whatever. No, it's not that. The difference is that when it comes to recruitment and retention, as far as us as police leaders now have to look at, is there is a generational difference. They have a generational need that's different. And they have requirements that's different. Smaller agencies, you're it. Like, you're it. And you don't have that. And as well as I do, John, we were talking about this before we came on. You have to go to, you choose, I'm not going to say have to, we choose. Let me change that. I don't want to get that narrative wrong. We choose to go do these things that we do. So you choose to go help your employees out by having to go sit at a hospital with a psychological patient so that they can go out and do their job because we're required to sit there.
Right.
We do the same. Like, we're required to sit there. Us as leaders choose to go do that so our people can go out. Larger departments have, 9, 10 people working a shift. That doesn't bother them.
Right.
And when you're going to hire, if I'm a person who has these generational needs, like most of them now are, money, time off, vacation, they have, and I'm not knocking it because it's something we're trying to force ourselves to. They have a better work-life balance.
Yes.
Than we ever did.
Right. I never had a conception of that. Like, as a late Gen Xer, I think I'm actually a Zennial, they say, right? Like,
whatever they call it. Yeah,
like right on the line.
Right on the cusp.
Right, like analog childhood, digital adult.
Right.
And so I always worked, I had 2 jobs. Often I had 2 police jobs at the same time. I actually, when the housing market crashed, Chris, I actually got laid off as a cop. They don't call it, it wasn't a layoff. What do they call it? Like, where your just hours get reduced. I can't remember what they call that. There's a term of art for that, where your hours get reduced a little bit. And I went and got a second part-time police job to make up the difference. I always worked every available amount of time that I could. And you're right. I don't knock it for it, right? They have better work-life balance, but we have to adjust as an organization to that kind of viewpoint, which is not something you or I are used to, right? Like
right.
when the chief called me in the past and said, "Hey, John, I need you to come in," I said, "I'll be right there."
Right. Right. And now they're going, well, you know what? No, I'm having Mai Tais on the beach. Like I'm not like
Right.
they have that balance. And when it comes to recruitment for us now, that failure, I guess, to be able to adapt is not just on us, it's on policing itself, because we're not conducive to that. This
Right.
job is not conducive to that. We are not a 8-hour a day, banker's hours, 7 days a week job. And the unfortunate thing is, and my son, I even talked to a lot about this, who's that later millennial that looks into it and goes, he's like, Dad, you have to understand, we have a greater sense, and he's not quite the Gen Zer, he's just before it, but he still has that sense of a work-life balance where we were all work, sacrifice this, sacrifice that. Like you said, chief calls, right. Give me a minute to brush my teeth and get some clothes on, and I'll be there as fast as my car gets me.
Right.
But they don't have that. And instead of us, we're not going to change that. And I think that's the hard part about us as leaders, is trying to go that we can't change that. We have to start finding a way to adapt to that.
Yeah, 100%. Well, I'll tell you on the recruitment side, I don't want us to just talk about problems, right?
Sure.
On the recruitment side, I feel like I have found some solutions.
Good. And that's what I wanted to get into. Like, what do you think is starting to work?
So, number one, we have, and I'm not going to pretend any of this is profound, but number one, we have made sure every officer understands they're the department's best recruiter. That they, you have a team, especially a small agency is a small team. Who do you want to be on this team? And they go out and they help select people to apply. And so I guess that's the other thing too, is like we were talking about policing being this one big thing. And it's like we're all trying to take a slice of the same pie. Chris, I'm looking at a totally different pie. Those people who are not traditional police applicants, those people who have not entered the applicant stream, like using the relationship to encourage people to apply. So I'll give you a simple example. We just hired three new people, but the one guy we hired before that, he was just in a circle of friends with some officers. They used to go to the gym together, do some different things together. He was working in a totally different industry. And through a series of conversations and relationships, they said, "Hey, we're about to have an opening, and we think you'd be a great fit on this team." We hired him. He was our most award-winning recruit ever. I think you might have seen that on LinkedIn, right?
Yeah, I did.
Academic award, top shot. And so he was someone who never even considered being in the applicant pool. So I guess that's part of it, right? Like, I'm not going to fight in the same pond with some of these other agencies. I'm going to go look for a different body of water. And right. I'm going to start fishing there. And so that's worked. And then using almost like that money ball model, going out and saying, "Hey, you can throw, you can catch, you can run, you can hit with power. Come play for Marion," right? Like, we see you. We have gone to people's places of employment, like, heard a tip on an applicant, gone to their place of employment and said, "Hey, we were talking to the football coach. He said you were great on the team, but, now it's a couple years later and maybe you're looking for some purpose. You ever thought about being a police officer?" And kind of doing that direct engagement model with them. And that seems to be working. And then I guess the other thing would be not advertising, but giving information in places you don't typically see it. So what I mean is, we had some some posters printed up, and we went out and put it in Tractor Supply.
Oh, nice.
Right. Catching some people kind of, again, people who wouldn't normally be in the stream.
Right.
Maybe they don't follow us on Facebook. Maybe they don't do any of those things. And so getting some awareness, and that seems to have worked. I've also let go of the idea of hiring certified candidates.
Okay.
I just let it go. It's not likely to happen. Even if it does, let's be honest, they're probably not a value add to the agency. That's not always true, but if they're leaving a large area, coming to a smaller area, there's maybe two reasons for that. Why? One, they want a different lifestyle, or two, there might be some kind of issue. Yeah. And so we have to unpack that. But we've been hiring fairly young folks, and we are lucky that we can do that. The policing in Marion is not incredibly high intensity, so we can be a teaching, mentoring kind of agency.
Sure.
And for us, it's worked pretty good, but we still lose some. Our last officer that departed, well, one of them became the fire chief, so that was good. I mean, he went up. But our
Right.
last officer that departed went to the local sheriff's office, which is a larger agency. And you know what I think is funny in a small department is they never say they're going to leave.
No.
Right? They're always like, "No, chief, I'm here forever.
I'll be here forever."
You're right. I'm here forever. And I say it's okay.
Yes.
You got to do what's
okay.
right for you. But they keep it a secret. And then, 2 days before they say, "Oh, well, I'm going over there." I said, "Well, why didn't you tell me?"
Yeah.
Because I could have been working on, replacing you. And what do you think I'm going to do? Fire? I don't know, man. It's funny. Cop culture is mystified.
Oh, yes. I actually just had the same exact thing happen. And it was me bringing somebody over that I knew. And then they only stuck around a year, and they decided to leave for money. And I kind of found out by accident. And I looked at him and I said, "Man, like, all you had to do was just tell me."
Right, just tell me.
I'm not going to hate you for it. Like, I'm not going to, you got to do what's right for you. But the part that you're doing is you're putting me in a bad position. All you have to do is talk to me. And you're like, why did you want to, just to your point, why do you think it's a big secret?
Right.
What do you think? I'm going to stop it? Or I think people don't realize that us as leadership in police departments, and especially smaller agencies, and it touches on exactly what you're doing, which is great. Like, go out and see that abnormal thing. Like, people look at me and go, "Well, you've had 3 applicants, but you didn't hire anybody." I said, "Because I'm in a small department. They have to fit."
Oh, correct. Hey, listen, I have turned away countless applicants because, like you just said, in a small body, just a little bit of toxicity becomes viral.
Yeah.
And it drags you down. We can't absorb it.
You can't hide the person. You can't move them to another division. You can't stick them in evidence. You can't do any of that. So it's a puzzle. Like, people don't understand for small. And I think that's another thing that I want to kind of put out there for people listening today. Like, if you're not used to hearing, or like, you hear policing, but you don't really understand what municipal departments deal with. It's like, right. You don't have a great body of people to deal with. So you're finding puzzle pieces that have to fit, that make that perfect picture.
Yes.
And sometimes it's easy, but it's become increasingly harder because now I think one of the things we're seeing, and we're seeing this especially in Delaware, because Delaware is real small, obviously. It's tight-knit. Our police agencies are pretty much conducive to doing the same stuff. We have the same reporting system, same everything. So you're looking at the problem where, you know this as well as I do. 15 years ago, you were putting out an application, you were getting 50, 60, sometimes 100 applicants.
Right. Remember how we used to throw them away if they didn't finish filling it out or didn't staple it right, or we just throw it away, right? Because you're trying to sort through it. Now if it's halfway filled out, we think we got something.
You're looking at it and you're going, okay, you're trying to figure it out, but you were getting them. I don't want to call it scraps, so I don't. It's just a term that I'm using. It doesn't mean that they're any less, but the state would get 1,000.
Right.
people taking a test. They got so many people, they would band it. Like you got an A band, a B band, a C band. Most of the time, they weren't hiring people in the C and D bands. So guess what the C and D banders were doing? They were
Right.
coming to the municipal agencies because you're a B-ball thing. You're a minor league team. Like,
Right.
and I'm sorry, any of you chiefs out there who are listening to this, who run small agencies that think I'm degrading you, I am not, because I'm one myself. But if you don't realize that you are a
We're a
starter
local
league,
market team. Local
yes.
market team, right?
If you don't realize that, and your people are, and you don't embrace that, let's put it that way,
Exactly.
then you're losing out.
Well, that's
Because
the point we're making, right? Like we have a unique identity as small agencies. Embrace it, and hire for it.
sure, yeah. But it was easier then because we knew that. Because you would hire people and maybe they'd do 4 or 5 years and you knew they were going to go. But you also knew there was a new crop of people who weren't going to get hired by the larger agencies that you could backfill. That happens no more.
Well,
You have to work harder.
and it might be different for you too. I was going to say, here's one key environmental difference or ecological difference for me in Appalachia. The bad thing about Appalachia is that people don't leave. The great thing about Appalachia is people don't leave.
People don't leave.
And so it's a closed system in a lot of ways. There's only so many places they're going to go because here's what they're not going to do. I've lived all over Virginia. I mean, I went from Northern Virginia all the way to Southwest Virginia. But a lot of folks who are from here, they love the environment. They love their people are here and they don't want to leave here.
Right.
And so there's only so many outlets. So eventually it kind of hits a saturation point, and then we can benefit from that, right? Like the sheriff's office is only going to hire so many people. And then when they're done, right, those doors close. But like for you or maybe a small agency around a larger metropolitan area, they're in an open system. There's no saturation point.
Right. There's no change. And I think that's where we have to kind of broaden that thought. I mean, we're talking a lot about where we are, and yes, that it's a microcosm of where it is. I mean, you think about them agencies that are sitting in real rural, outlying agencies who are kind of getting closed out because of this. Because one, where they are, their finances aren't the same, so they're probably making enough that they can live on because we know that's how it works. Our salaries might be bigger than your salaries just because of what the inflation point is in that area, or if you're around a big city, or if you don't have a lot of industry. And some of these people are getting pushed out. And you see these departments are literally closing. Like they're no longer having police departments.
Yeah.
And I know a lot of people go, smaller agencies are just a product of towns wanting to have own control over their blah, 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 blah. But the really thing is, and you know it as well as I do, John, is the reason that small towns try to have a police agency is because if it's covered by one agency covering a bigger area, do they really get the services that they deserve?
Well, that's what we're getting at, right? The small town officer is way more customer oriented, way more capable, and does way more follow through. So having worked for a huge agency, I've seen what I call fast food law enforcement. That's where we are so busy that I show up and I say, hey, I'm Officer Clair. How can I help you? I let you talk for 30 seconds and I say, sir, no disrespect. Fast forward to the part about why you called me here, right? You get any one of 10 preset solutions and I'm on to the next customer. And I'm not saying that's a point of pride. I'm saying that's the reality of highly urban, overworked, 911 patrol response driven policing. That's what it looks like. And it's the point of huge criticism. Small town policing is it's Burger King. You get it your way, right? Like we make it however you want it. And so I don't know, man. It's just, but you were talking about the hiring too, and I wanted to mention this, and this is what you were talking about. If I've learned anything from running small agency is this: I hire for one trait and one trait only: behavioral intelligence. That's it. I don't really care about anything else. The rest of it we'll teach them behavioral intelligence, because as soon as you get a lack of it, it drags absolutely everything down.
Right. Right.
And then you have people probably trying to retain people they shouldn't because they're so short, right? And then it lingers in the agency and creates even more problems. That's what you're talking about with passing folks over. I tested with I shouldn't say the name. I tested with a large urban, I almost said it, right?
There you go.
A large urban,
we try to keep that out.
yeah, I tested with a large urban police department in 2005. I sat in a room with several hundred people and took a test and then did this kind of video test. I was just getting out of the Army. And they called me in and they said, "Hey, we don't think we're going to offer you a position." I was floored by this. I was like, "What are you talking about?" And they're like, "Yeah, you're just high school graduate. I mean, you're a veteran, but yeah, we don't see anything special." That kind of blew me away, right?
Right.
Those days are over.
Oh,
right?
Yeah.
There's no more of that. But I don't know what works in your area.
Well, I think one of the things that we're seeing, but see, so like yourself, I've gone back to school. I went and got my degree. I'm working on my master's degree, just like you're working on yours. I mean, we see value in that as later in life because of what we're trying to do, right?
Right.
But did it get us to where we are? No.
No.
No. And for some of these agencies, to your point, back in the day, like they wouldn't even we wouldn't be hired at all. But we're sitting here as leaders of departments, albeit small departments, and still have had, lucrative and respective careers.
Right.
So one of the things when I first got the job as a leader in law enforcement, they're like, "Well, are you going to have a, educational thing? Do they have to have college?" I'm like, "No. We restrict ourselves. So you're already restricted. So why should smaller agencies restrict themselves more to not get the people that have common sense,
right?
That are able to have, look, give me a guy with street knowledge over book knowledge any day.
Right. And just the ability to talk to people, which is something we're suffering with in modern law enforcement.
But
right?
But now you see they're changing that. So now these larger agencies, state police agencies and larger county agencies are going, "Whoa, hold on a second. Okay, we're going to get rid of the college requirement now."
Right.
It's 2024. You're going to get rid of it now. You know why you're getting rid of it now? Because you can't find the people that want to do this job. Because also there's a new the job scene of things people are able to do. Well, they want to work at home. They want to make more money. They want to be on Google. They want to be on Facebook. There's so much of a I'm not knocking a generation. That's just the way it is.
Right.
That it's the change that they're also seeing. They have to open up their pool and not restrict it either because they're not hiring. But here's my last point some of the point I wanted to get to towards the end of our conversation today. With all of this, we're seeing that many police departments are closing their doors.
Yeah.
Or they're losing people to a point where they can no longer have a full-time police department. So do you see in your area, because I see it's probably going to be after I'm retired, but I see bigger departments kind of outpricing and pushing out small agencies, which is going to cause a bigger problem for themselves because now they're going to be the ones that have to cover these areas.
I'm not seeing it here, but I'll tell you, it's hard not to feel like it's on the horizon. I think one difference would be we have a more dispersed geography here. So if you're the small agency, maybe right up against a larger one where just kind of going one town over is just a question of a few miles, then yeah, there's probably some danger there. Here, the localities are so dispersed that I probably don't see it happening. But it's definitely something to think about. But like you mentioned, I've seen it before. It's always the same yo-yo, and the yo-yo goes like this. A small agency will be rocked by scandal. Oh, by the way, Chris, why are small agencies always rocked by scandal? Because we never get to the performing stage because of turnover. Storming, norming, storming, norming, storming. That's all we ever get to. Storming, norming. And so then they get rocked by scandal. This embarrasses, the locality, and they end up paying more to get better people. And then they start saying, why are we paying so much for this? It's so expensive. And they mess it up. And so they get rid of it. And they go with a larger agency. Well, then they lose the Burger King field. And they end up in the drive-through. And they're like, wait a minute. This is not what we want. And then they come back again. And then They start it again. I can't remember the guy's name. He used to be all over LinkedIn, where he started an agency in Florida. So there was an agency in Florida that kind of went through this loop. He started it, he built it up, and then kind of crashed. And I think it's gone now. And somebody else came back. I can't remember. But I feel like I see those articles all the time. But people have to decide what they want. I think Marion's been good at that. Marion wants its own local police department. And I, as the chief, consciously try to think of making sure that we fit the community expectation. So, Chris, we don't have a motor unit or a drone unit or a marine unit or whatever units, right? Like, our agency, our community is not demanding these kind of capabilities. They want good, clean, core police work. Probably the same for you.
Yeah, I think that, the last conversation that I had, so when I had got where I'm at, there was one person there. And that was 12 years ago. So in the meantime, it's built up. So we tried to do the full-time thing. We tried to get to a certain place. We had a retirement. We tried part-time. We've tried a lot of things. We finally got to that position where we've tried as much as we possibly can. So we are what we are. And sometimes you have to realize, we are what we are. You look at the statistics, you look at what you're doing, you look at when you're needed, and you focus all of your intent on that process.
Right. Peak service hours. Right. And most repeated call types, right?
Right.
That's who
and what services work, and what are we doing for the community, and when do we need to be there? And that's sometimes where you got to get to. Yeah. And you have to realize, as much as you want to be, everything to everyone, as far as it comes to policing and in your area, you're like, sometimes you got to realize just that. We are what we are.
Yeah. And
do what you need to do, hire for what you need, and give the best possible service that you can to the town or the community that you're in.
Well, and to your point, right, it also helps us, the chief, to communicate transparently with the community about capabilities. So do you get a lot of extra patrol requests, so we have this police department, and somewhere we just must have all these officers that are extra who go do, right? Yeah. I don't know where they come from. And I tell them, there's no place I can call where policemen fall from the sky.
Right.
I don't have a mint in the basement where I stamp them out. And so we don't have any extra, right? What ends up happening is you end up with focused work until the next thing catches on fire, and then you focus there again and again and again and again. But I've been trying to have a deliberate conversation with the community saying, hey, in the last 48 hours, I've received 24 extra patrol requests. Guys, that's just not what this looks like. Okay, right. So we can focus here for a little while, but then we have to go back to kind of the baseline of what we're doing. And that frustrates citizens, and I get it, because they're like, hey, you guys were hot and heavy down there for 2 weeks, and then we haven't seen you. Well, it's because we're hot and heavy over here now.
Right.
It's like we're constantly juggling the ball back and forth. But I think as long as you're transparent with the community, hopefully it measures their expectations a little better, and you get the right fit. Right. And then you can say, hey, if you want this, then I'm going to need this. I'm not a magician. I'm a chief of police, man. I can't. Right. I've squeezed all the blood out of this turnip. I'm gonna get out of it. Yeah. And so I need something else.
This discussion is kind of just for everybody out there. We may be different areas, But across this nation, small departments are juggling the same things. And it's just to give you that better understanding that we're trying every day.
Right.
But we do have, blockades in the way.
Right. And it takes constant coaching. Right? You are constantly coaching your people about, hey, listen, this is what you're here for. This is what the people are looking for. Be proud of that. Don't degrade that. Don't, I'll give you an example. I've been working with some of our newer officers. They recently bought some lemonade from a lemonade stand. I know that seems so hokey, but whatever. I said, listen, believe it or not, in this locality, that's the best police work you did all day.
Yeah.
Because you made that kid's day. You made his parents' day. You built trust and legitimacy. You built confidence in the Marion Police Department. That is good. That is good. Don't discount that as, fluff or icing or something like that. Don't discount that. That stuff's important, but it all depends on their conception. Like, Chris, I'm sure you're dealing with in your agency, like cynicism as well, right?
Sure.
So this is what I think helps with retention. The distance between what you think you should be doing and what you actually do is what creates cynicism. So of the two things, what I think I should be doing, what I actually do, which is the easiest to move? What I think I should be doing. And we bring those together, and I think that helps, but it's an uphill battle because the police myth gets in our heads, right? I'm preaching community to them all day and they go home and watch Training Day.
Yeah.
Right? And they're like, oh, that's the real McCoy.
Sure.
Right?
You're watching Law and Order, NCIS.
Right. So you're pushing against that. But I'll tell you, when you find ones that fit, man, it's great.
Yeah, I think we look now. I say this a lot, and I know people go, God, you say that every time. Because it's true. I'm closer to the end than I am the beginning. My job now is just to try to get people that have that mindset.
Yes.
That when you're working for a small community, it's not about get them, go. Like, you're building a relationship. You mentioned the lemonade thing. Like, you know what? By doing that, that's going to give them officers years of trust.
Yes.
Because you don't know what that child's path is going to be.
Right.
It could end up being a police officer.
Yeah. And those long-term relationships.
It could end up being somebody who's in trouble. But yet, because they remember that you took that time when they were a kid, you may have a better rapport with that person as a late teen or early adult than you would have had if you didn't do that.
And that's so here's the other thing I've been thinking a lot about. I'm reading a book called The Courage to be Disliked. The title's a little misleading. Do you have it? Yeah. The title's a little misleading, right?
Yes, it is.
But the point he makes, I just finished it this morning. The point he makes is winning moment by moment, living moment, not living moment by moment without a greater cause, but full focus.
Right.
And this is what I'm preaching to the officer, right? You win this thing one relationship at a time, one call at a time, fully focused, full service, one at a time. We do that 5,000 times and we won, right? But you have to do it one step at a time. Don't get overcome. And it's the same. I try to think the same thing with recruiting. I just hired 3 incredible people. 2 of them are in their early 20s. They're coming from, different industries, no police experience, highly behaviorally intelligent. One of them came from private industry as well, also in the National Guard, a little more maturity, but all of them incredibly behaviorally intelligent. Did it take a while to find them? Yes. Will they stay? I hope so, but I know that I won each of those, right? Like this is a good one. This is a good one. This is a good one. I don't worry about all the ones I can't find.
Right.
Right. And focus on the ones I can.
That's awesome. Well, you brought up that book. I could spend another hour on that book.
Yeah, but we can follow up on that book on the next one.
Yes.
It got me this morning. It got the end of it got me.
And it's easy to read. Look, I'm going to tell you this. I'm going to do a podcast, and I will have you back on for that. And my friend Matt is going to be, because I told him to read it. I definitely recommend this book to every single person out there, especially doing this job.
Yes.
We are so hard on ourselves. We are the worst enemy of ourselves throughout this career. I wish they had this. I wish I read this book 30 years ago. Right.
But it got me this morning. Man, it got me.
Yeah, it is a fact, and it's an easy look. I know cops don't like to read.
Right.
It is a fabulous, easy to read book that hits you at every point of your life, because you just, as you read it, and I'm sure you found this out, John, and I don't want to go too far into it because, again, I could spend another hour on this book.
Right.
Like, as you read it, you just reflect on every little part of your life where you might have done that, and said, if I would have had this way back then, I wouldn't have been so critical about myself, or I wouldn't have let that person affect me that way, or I wouldn't have done this.
I wouldn't have yelled so much.
Right.
Chris, why do I yell? Why am I angry? Because I want to yell.
Yes.
Man.
You know why? Because we were, again, it's a generational thing, and I'm not blaming the generation, but that's how we were dealt with. You were in the service, I was in, that's how people got you to do stuff. It's like, if you're not listening, I'm getting in your face and I'm screaming at you, and you're like, you brought that with you, and you didn't, and that made you realize, like, man, I was so stupid. Like, that wasn't accomplishing a damn thing.
Right. And
other than somebody turning me off because they're like, and it's worse now, like, don't do it now. That's what we're finding, and that's a whole nother conversation for another time, in academies and changing what you're doing and just screaming at people, and like, that is not working. But
right.
I'm going to let that one go because that's just a whole nother ball of wax. John, I appreciate you joining me, my friend, early here. For anybody else, you're going to hear this whenever. This is early on a Saturday morning. John, thank you for taking the time. I greatly appreciate it.
Man, I appreciate it. And I think these conversations are important. I hope somebody heard something that was valuable. Maybe hit us up if you did, or if you think we're totally crazy. Well, that's your task. I'll focus on mine. Right. I'll focus on being me, and you focus on being you.
Exactly. I have that courage to be just like, trust me.
Right. All right, man.
All right, my friend. Well, you stay safe. You need anything, give me a holler. We will definitely do this again.
Absolutely.
Take care of yourself, John, and take care of your department and your people and your family, and we will see you down the road.
All right, Chris. Thank you.
Take care, my friend.
You've been listening to the DeepBlu Project. As a father, husband, friend, and someone who loves to chat about anything and everything, Chris brings over 3 decades of public service experience to the table. With a background in firefighting and law enforcement, along with degrees in criminal justice and behavioral science, he's seen it all, and he's learned a thing or two along the way. We hope you enjoyed the show. If you did, make sure to like, rate, and review. We'll be back soon. But in the meantime, find us on LinkedIn and X at DeepBlu Project. Find our website at deepblueproject.com. And to reach out, send an email to deepblueproject@outlook.com. Keep keeping it real. And we'll see you next time on the DeepBlu Project.